everyone, welcome back. I'm so pumped for today's deep dive. We're tackling a topic that's been buzzing all over the internet lately, and honestly, it's something I've been wanting to wrap my head around for a while now. Diversity.
It's a huge one, for sure. And to really get into it, we're using this awesome article as our guide. It's called Breaking Down Diversity in Today's Society. And let me tell you, it does not hold back.
Seriously, this article is packed, and we're not just skimming the surface here. Oh no, we're going deep. We're talking history, globalization, the good, the bad, the whole shebang.
Exactly. What I love about this article is it doesn't just define diversity. It lays out the historical context, shows how globalization plays into it all, and gets real about the challenges and the pretty incredible benefits, too.
Okay, so let's kick things off with the basics. What exactly is diversity? I mean, we hear it everywhere, but what does it actually mean?
Right. Well, the article gets straight to the point. Diversity equals differences.
Okay, simple enough, right? But I have a feeling it's way more than just, like, checking boxes.
You got it. The article is all about recognizing that diversity isn't just a checklist. It's about appreciating the depth and complexity within those categories. It's about the tapestry of cultures, traditions, and experiences that make individuals and groups unique.
So it's about digging deeper than just surface level.
Yeah.
Like when we're talking about race and ethnicity, we can't get stuck on just physical traits. The article is pushing us to consider the shared histories, the nuances of culture, all those experiences.
Exactly. Even within one racial or ethnic group, the diversity of experience is vast. It's about understanding those subtleties and recognizing that simplistic categories just don't cut it.
Right, right. And then there's gender and sexual orientation, where the article is all about moving beyond that binary. It's about recognizing the spectrum of identities and creating space for everyone to feel, truly included.
That's key. Inclusivity. It's not just acknowledging differences, it's making sure everyone feels valued and respected for who they are.
And we can't leave out those dimensions of diversity that sometimes get overlooked: age, disability, and socioeconomic status. The article makes it clear that these factors shape our experiences so much.
Absolutely. It's all interconnected, like a web, right? Each thread represents a different part of a person's identity and how they experience the world.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting for me. The article takes us on a little trip through the history of diversity, and guess what? This isn't some newfangled idea.
Not at all. I mean, think about those ancient empires. They were full of diverse populations grappling with different languages, customs, you name it. It's like challenges that are still relevant today.
So diversity has always been around, but the article makes the point that our modern understanding of it has evolved, over time.
The Enlightenment was huge for that. It sparked new ideas about individual rights and freedoms, really laying the foundation for how we think about equality and diversity today.
And then you have those huge social movements: abolition, suffrage, the civil rights movement, each one pushing for greater recognition of diversity.
Yeah, the Civil Rights Act was a major milestone in the U.S. But the article, and this is important, points out that progress, well, it's not a straight line. Systemic barriers and prejudices are still around, reminding us that this conversation about diversity, it's far from over.
Okay, so let's talk about globalization. It's like this crazy web connecting everything and everyone. But is it good or bad for diversity? The article gives us both sides of the coin.
On the one hand, you can't deny that globalization has led to amazing cultural exchange. You can experience traditions from across the globe without even leaving your home.
Totally. I can try foods from different cultures, listen to music from all over. It's pretty amazing. But, and the article points this out, there's this risk of cultural imperialism.
That's the fear that dominant cultures will overshadow, maybe even erase, the unique traditions of, smaller cultures. It's a bit like a tiny bookstore trying to compete with a giant online retailer.
It makes you think, right? How has globalization affected your experience with diversity? Has it opened you up to new things, or has it made you more aware of the challenges of, preserving what makes cultures unique?
It's a good question to consider. Everyone's experience is different, but it's definitely something worth thinking about.
Now, let's get real about the challenges. The article doesn't shy away from the tough stuff. Prejudice, discrimination, just plain misunderstanding, these are real roadblocks.
And it's important to go beyond the surface. The article talks about microaggressions, those subtle but hurtful comments or actions that can really wear someone down over time.
It's like death by a thousand cuts, right? Each one might seem small, but the impact builds up.
Exactly. And then there's systemic inequality. It's not just about a few bad apples. It's about systems that are inherently designed to disadvantage certain groups no matter what.
The article gives some pretty stark examples, from housing to healthcare, showing how these systems create real barriers for people.
And this is where it gets personal. The source talks about how people experience isolation, anxiety, fear even, because of these challenges. We're not talking about abstract ideas here. We're talking about real lives.
Yeah, it's about recognizing the human impact of these issues, and that's what this deep dive is all about.
Absolutely. Understanding the complexities of diversity is crucial for creating a more just and equitable world for everyone.
Okay, so we've talked about the challenges, but now let's shift gears and talk about solutions. The article dives into some pretty awesome ways to actually promote diversity, and it all starts with education.
You know, it's funny because when most people think of education, they think about facts and figures in textbooks. But when it comes to diversity, education is so much more than that.
It's about shaping how we see the world, right? Like how we view people who are different from us.
Exactly. It's about cultivating empathy, understanding, and the ability to, really engage with difference.
So, how do we actually use education to foster a real appreciation for diversity? The article points to two key areas: inclusive curricula and, was it? Oh, yeah, meaningful interactions.
Right. Let's start with curricula, the stuff we're teaching in schools. If we want students to embrace diversity, they need to see themselves reflected in the materials.
Makes sense. It's like if history class is just about a bunch of, kings and conquerors, then students are missing out on all the stories and contributions of diverse groups.
And it's not just history, it's literature, science, math. All subjects should showcase the achievements and experiences of people from different backgrounds.
It's about making sure all students feel seen, heard, and like they belong.
It really is. And it's not just about making students feel good. It's about giving them a more accurate and well-rounded understanding of the world.
When they're exposed to diverse perspectives from a young age, they can start to challenge stereotypes and think critically about things.
It's crucial for preparing them to navigate a world that's, becoming more interconnected every day. But, inclusive curricula are only part of the equation.
Right. What was that second piece?
Meaningful interactions. It's one thing to read about different cultures in a textbook, but it's a whole other thing to experience them firsthand.
Ah, I see what you mean. So things like cultural exchange programs, diversity workshops, actually getting out there and interacting with people from different backgrounds.
Exactly. Imagine a classroom where students from different cultures share their traditions and stories, or a school project where they work together to tackle a social issue. Those kinds of experiences build empathy and understanding in a way that a textbook just can't.
It makes me think about my own education. Did it really equip me to, understand and navigate a diverse world? Did it challenge my assumptions? I think those are questions we all need to be asking ourselves.
It's an ongoing process for sure. Education isn't something that ends when you graduate. It's a lifelong journey of learning and growing and expanding your horizons.
And it's not just about formal education either. It's about the books we read, the movies we watch, the conversations we have. All of these things shape how we see the world.
So be intentional about seeking out diverse perspectives.
Right.
Challenge yourself to step outside of your comfort zone and engage with people who are different from you. You might be surprised by what you learn.
That's great advice. Okay, so we've talked about the theory. Now let's see it in action. The article highlights some pretty cool real-world examples of individuals and organizations that are like walking the walk when it comes to diversity and inclusion.
These are the stories that show what's possible when people go beyond just talking about diversity and actually start doing something about it.
One example that really stuck with me was this multinational corporation that, really wanted to create a more inclusive workplace. So they implemented this amazing diversity training program.
And it wasn't just a one-time thing. They made it a core part of their company culture.
They really invested in it. And the results were incredible. They saw a huge increase in diversity at all levels of the company, plus, a happier and more engaged workforce.
It shows that when you prioritize diversity and inclusion, it's not just good for employees, it's good for business too.
There was another cool example from the tech world. This tech firm was really struggling with diversity, which is unfortunately pretty common in that industry. But they decided to do something about it.
Instead of just waiting for diverse candidates to apply, they partnered with minority-serving institutions to create a pipeline of talent.
They also developed mentorship programs and special training to help people from underrepresented backgrounds succeed. Talk about proactive.
They understood that it wasn't enough to just hire diverse talent. They needed to create an environment where everyone could thrive.
Ah,
And it had a ripple effect, not just within the company, but in the wider tech industry too.
I love that. It shows that even in industries that have traditionally struggled with diversity, change is possible. But it's not just about big corporations, right?
Right. The article also talked about a local government that was really committed to making sure diverse voices were heard in their community.
They actually created a diversity council with people from all different backgrounds to make sure everyone's perspectives were considered in decision making.
That's a great example of how grassroots efforts can make a real difference. It's not just about big sweeping changes. It's about the actions we take in our own communities, in our everyday lives.
So whether it's advocating for more inclusive policies, supporting organizations that champion diversity, or just, having open and honest conversations with people who are different from us, we can all contribute to creating a more just and equitable world.
It's about understanding that diversity isn't something that just happens. It's something we actively create.
And that's a powerful message. We all have a role to play.
And we are back for the final part of our deep dive into diversity. We've covered a lot of ground, but there's still so much more to explore, like how diversity impacts us in, tangible ways. That's what really gets me excited, how diversity makes our communities richer, sparks innovation, and just makes the world a more dynamic place.
And a lot of people might think, oh, diversity is just a nice idea. But the source we've been using actually lays out some pretty concrete benefits.
Yeah, it's not just feel-good stuff. There's real evidence to back it up, like the article cites studies showing that diverse teams are just better at problem solving and coming up with new ideas.
It makes sense when you
Yeah.
think about it. Bringing together people from different walks of life with different experiences, it's like you're bound to get a wider range of perspectives.
It's like that saying, two heads are better than one,
Yeah.
but amplified, right? You've got all these different minds working together, challenging each other, and that leads to more creative solutions.
The article gave this cool example of a design firm that was trying to come up with a new product, but they were kind of stuck. So they decided to form a team with people from all over the company, like engineers, marketing folks, even customer service reps.
What happened?
They ended up creating this totally groundbreaking product that no one had ever seen before. It was a huge success because they tapped into all those different viewpoints.
That's the magic of diversity, right? It unlocks potential and leads to these amazing breakthroughs that wouldn't have been possible otherwise.
And these benefits, they're not just limited to, the business world. The article also talks about how diversity strengthens communities.
Think about it. When you have people from all different backgrounds living and interacting in a community, it creates this rich tapestry of experiences and traditions. It's more
Yeah.
vibrant.
And it fosters more understanding and empathy between people, which is so important.
Exactly. And the research shows that diverse communities tend to have more civic engagement, more volunteerism, even better economic growth. When people feel like they belong and their voices are heard, they're more invested in making their community thrive.
It's not just about, being politically correct or anything like that. It's about creating a society where everyone feels valued and respected and, able to contribute in their own way.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another really important aspect of diversity, one that sometimes gets overlooked: diversity of thought.
Oh, yeah, that's huge. We've been talking a lot about diversity in terms of race, gender, those kinds of things. But just as important is the diversity of ideas, perspectives, and, ways of thinking.
It's a bit ironic, but in our efforts to promote diversity, we sometimes forget that it also includes embracing different viewpoints.
And that can be really challenging, especially in today's world where everything feels so polarized.
Yeah, people tend to gravitate towards those who agree with them, creating these echo chambers where, everyone's just reinforcing the same ideas. But that doesn't really lead to progress, does it?
No, it's like trying to solve a puzzle with only a few pieces. You're never going to see the whole picture.
Diversity of thought is so important because it forces us to confront our own biases and consider perspectives that we might not have even thought of before.
So what can we do to, actually cultivate diversity of thought?
Well, one simple thing is to be more mindful of the information you consume. Don't just stick to one news source or social media feed. Branch out and get different perspectives, even ones you might not initially agree with.
That's so important. And when you do encounter those different viewpoints, Don't just shut them down. Engage in respectful dialogue. Try to understand where the other person is coming from.
Exactly. You might not change your mind, but at least you've broadened your understanding a little bit.
Another thing we can do is, be more aware of our own language and the assumptions we make. Are we using inclusive language that avoids stereotypes? Are we open to having our own assumptions challenged?
Those are tough questions, but they're important ones to ask ourselves. We all have biases, and it's through, open and honest dialogue that we can start to identify those biases and hopefully overcome them.
So, to wrap things up, I think what we've learned from this deep dive is that embracing diversity in all its forms is not just a nice thing to do, it's essential for a thriving society.
It's what makes life more interesting, more dynamic, and more fulfilling. It challenges us to grow and learn and become better versions of ourselves.
We hope this deep dive has given you a lot to think about and maybe even inspired you to take action in your own life. Because ultimately, creating a more diverse and inclusive world is up to all of us.
It's a journey, not a destination,
Yeah.
right? And every step we take, no matter how small, makes a difference.
And on that note, thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey of exploring diversity. We've had such a blast discussing this with you, and we hope you'll continue the conversation. Until next time.